You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another special guest for y'all today. Today, we're going to be talking about all about Singh leadership, and we have the one and only Singh here with us. He is an executive leadership coach and a high performance mentor. We're going to learn everything about his amazing story because he has, as a visionary leader, he has over 20 years of experience revolutionizing business and building high performance teams. He is going to share with us not just his amazing stories, but some of the pain points and high pressure that he had to face along the way. And when we know about emotional intelligence and understanding what it takes to perform under pressure, this guy is really going to share with us some amazing insight on that topic. So first and foremost, Singh, I know you have cleared your calendar for us today. Thank you for your time, and how you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time. Your journey, though, if I rewind the clock a little bit, when you were 14, you went through some training and you discovered the power of mindfulness. I think that's a very key insight to your story. So if you don't mind, take us back to that age and what kind of training were you under?
Sure. So growing up, I was blessed and fortunate to be in a very affluent family. And I was youngest of the three siblings and very hyperactive since very little. So I think I was 3, 4, maybe when my mother introduced me to percussion, Indian percussion. And I got involved in, very seriously involved in classical percussion. That was my way of getting the energy out of me. So by the time I got to 14 years, I finished or completed postmasters in Indian classical percussion, but my anger was still there. Something that was there that I would pick fights, literally. I mean, if you don't say I would pick fight, if you say I would pick fight, if you know what I really mean by that, right? So at that time, because of the relationship my dad had with spiritual group also, he got me introduced to a lama in Tibet. And I got to spend the summer, 2.5, 3 months almost, with him in training of mindful practices.
When you look back and see how that training made an impact in your life, how do you believe it has shaped your leadership philosophy and execution when it comes to performing under pressure?
That one, if I fast forward my education, I went through all the degrees and everything and working, I lost track of keeping 100% mindful practice on the forefront. It was not till the ransomware attack that we went through in 2020, and once I was out of that whole episode and I was invited to speak a few places, I reverted back and I realized that it was that practice that I have carried with me all along. It's just that I have never labeled it a mindful practice, right? So simple things like being present in a moment with your team, giving them that respect to be able to have a conversation, right? Having emotional agility to be able to respond thoughtfully to your emotions, not just reacting all the time. Simple things like especially when you're under stress, you have to make decisions very quickly. Right. And when you have to make decisions, you need that cognitive clarity, which only comes if you can balance your emotions, which then only comes if you're present in a conversation with someone to be able to do that. Right. So after that, in 21, 22, I started looking back in my life. There are multiple episodes like that where I have built teams, very high performing teams in cutthroat environments. Then where I really landed was, there is two different parts. If you think about leadership dilemma, right, you will find two different extremes. One extreme is the relentless dog-eat-dog culture where it's very fast-paced growth environment, right? Everybody is just worried about results, nothing else. Now, the other extreme of that is, Google also tried this and then they had to stop it, is put everybody on a beanbag and let them meditate for a whole day, you lose all credibility and results. So my point is that truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? The real challenge, especially in modern leadership, is finding a balanced approach to be able to cultivate presence, clarity, and emotional resilience, right? And on top of that, the challenge in today's environment is social media has trained us very well to have our focus for less than 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? No matter which platform you're using. Right? And somebody, I was having a conversation with one of my a very good friend, is my client also, over the weekend, and he's like, I don't get why I start doing something and I just get lost in scrolling something. I'm like, see, this is something very simple. I teach to high school kids all the time. If you ask 3 questions, you will stop doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
The first question, whatever activity you start, even if you start scrolling, even if you pick up a pen, the first question you want to ask is, what I am trying to get out of this activity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, because when you are cool under pressure, when you're not allowing your emotions dictate how you respond, because if you're not careful, you end up going blind. So you're moving without any like precision. You're just moving randomly. You're just scatterbrained. You're reacting based on how you feel versus on what actually needs to be done. With the training that you had at such a young age, how did you use those tools to remind yourself as you were growing with leadership and responsibilities, to remind yourself to get back to that center, to where you have that cool, collected mind, so that way when challenges came, there's a story in 2020 that we need to touch on, but when challenges came, you were able to say, you know what, I've been in this same pickle before. Let's not react the same old way that we might have when we were younger.
So I'm blessed that I was not only able to do it myself, but I've trained at least hundreds of people in 20 years that have worked directly with me. Because what I was going to ask, say 3 questions, right? I always start conversation with 3 questions. What are we trying to get out of this activity? Number 1. Number 2 is, who else can do this activity? Right? And number 3 is, if not activity, then what? Right? The moment you put that in practice, this became the foundation for the leadership mastery compass that I created. We get so bogged down in everything that we forget to check in with ourselves all day long.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? And the one simple exercise that I give everyone is, think about stop sign. Every time you drive, anywhere you go, you see a red signal or something. Or when you stop doing something, just think about stop. Very simple, STOP. Slow down your thought. Look at the last thought that you had. Observe. Right? Place a name to that and move on. When you start doing this, what you just did was you took a 30-second of mindful break. To be able to think what was the last thought in your brain, you have to actually focus, right? You have to do something that your brain is not expecting you to do. So you let that brain get a break. That is what I mean when I say that you need to develop that resilience to be able to check in with yourself every so often, right? I always recommend people that, set up a timer on your phone every 2 hours, 2 minutes check-in. See, the frustration that I started having in corporate life was 65 to 70% of the time when people come in meetings, right, they are not present.
Yeah.
Because they're working. They're working on their laptops, they're working on their phones, they're scrolling something, they're responding to that email, everything. And I have proven this with people that 90% of the time, that's the number, 90% of the time, the first 15% of the time that your meeting is scheduled, you are busy thinking about what you did before.
Yeah.
Right? And the last 15%, you are thinking about the next activity that you have after that meeting.
Yeah.
Right? So the only time people are present is when there is a loss, when somebody is getting fired, when somebody is getting hurt. So when something negative is there, that's the only time people getting engaged. It's frustrating. Right? Human life is so bigger than just the negative things that we discuss.
I want to prove that real quick because you talk about stop signs and when you're driving, the perfect example of that, how people always focus on something negative is if there's a car accident or someone has a flat or whatever, siren, someone got put over. Next time you're driving, notice how everyone slows down, not just because of safety. Because one is for safety, but two is because they want to look and observe what is going on in that moment. And I think that is key. When things happen, we tend to just say, okay, drop everything. I'm going to tune in what's going on. But what I want to say about the signal part that you was talking about, how it allows us to pause and kind of have that mindful thinking. What happens is, when you allow yourself to observe what's going on, it allows you to make the next move with strategy. Because when you're driving, we all doing it all the time from point A to point B. We're paying attention. Well, some of us are trying to. A lot of us run stop signs or traffic lights, but for the most part, people are trying to be alert and they react to those signals that, in a lot of cases, they're keeping you safe, because if you're not, you're just thinking about your destination. But in between those stops or those traffic lights or those lane changes, and that's a good metaphor with life. Sometimes we have to have those stops or those pauses or change of direction, because if we don't, we're just kind of just randomly going places.
And if you extend that conversation and just that same example, right? If you always go from point A to point B, and you have done that 100 times, if I ask you, can you show me 15 unique buildings between point A and point B? You will struggle. You know why you'll struggle? Because you consciously drove that maybe 2 or 3 times, and then you went on autopilot.
Yeah. I mean, we learned that. I'm old school, but I'm in my 30s. But I remember when I did driver's ed, that's the first thing they said is, you're going to get to the point where you're driving where you're going to stop doing this way. You're just going to hold the wheel at the bottom. And yeah, you're going to be kind of like relaxed, but you will always know that you got to your destination. But to your point, those in-betweens, you're not going to be able to say all those details, because sometimes you drive and then boom, you're parking. It's like, wait, how did I get here?
So then my question is, how many minutes we spend with ourselves, with our children, with our friend, with our colleague, if we are not on autopilot?
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. That is autopilot. That's a perfect example of autopilot. Once again, listen, I'm Refocused Radio, watching us online, talking to Singh. Go to his website, singhleadership.com. Let's talk about a crisis that happened, because you're talking about being able to be cool under pressure and being able to be mindful in every situation. In 2020, you experienced a ransomware crisis. Tell us a little bit about what happened and how were you able to navigate that situation?
It was a very unfortunate situation. Most of people in technology, we are trained, but we know it's not to happen. We don't want that to happen. Morning, and the very first incident report I got was I was just getting into the parking lot of my office. I left my bag and everything. I rushed on my desk and started looking at the attack. I had 3 of my reports right there next to me, and I just literally had them sit down on the chair and had them hold their hand to their heart and take 5 deep breaths. I said, once we took that 5 breaths, my next thing was, here is how we are going to approach it. I want you first person to do X, Y, and Z, make these 3 phone calls, have these 3 conversations, and come within 40 minutes. The second person, exactly what needs to be done. And I said, you are not going to use your phone to communicate anything to anyone except for this task right now. Right? And this is what I'm going to do. These are 3 calls I'm going to make. I got one call with FBI, local shop here. The local agents were able to confirm exactly what the threat was. I have a very good friend who is also chief information security officer. I called, he was my second call. I said, hey, Jason, can you give me any pointers on, I'm in this situation, what to do? And we had a quick discussion. My third call was to my CEO and the board members that, hey, we are under attack, but give me some cover time to be able to manage this. Here is, and I've got this one person in my team who's going to coordinate with you, the CEO, on making sure that all the communication is going. So just stepping back and not reacting and not making a fuss out of it, we were able to engage with our partners, our data center partners. And they have never heard of us this kind of approach. And I said, I want you to go and test my second backup and see if there is if you can identify any issue with that. Is it clean? Or do you think that is infected too? So it took them a couple of hours, and I had one of my admin work with them. Within 2.5 hours, they came back and said, no, this particular copy looks clean. I said, okay, I don't care what it takes. Let's put all energy behind it. This one person with you, I want this up and running in next 24 hours. Right? Second, the person I was working with in the finance department to get the insurance company on the call, right? And then they gave us another partner to investigate what went wrong. And they were able to investigate very quickly where the issue was, what the issue was. And again, all of this is happening during COVID, 2020, October, peak of COVID. Everybody is working from home, right? So now, logistics-wise, I had to coordinate with my leaders, business folks, to figure out how I am going to get this new patch deployed in all 140 machines for people who are not in the office, right? And now people are scared coming out of the home because of COVID and everything else. So anyway, long story short, it was being able to hold people their hand to help breathe. That's it. And every so often somebody would come panicking and just sit down, just take a deep try breath, and let's stop. Because all you're doing at that point is you're getting people out of autopilot. Right?
Yeah.
More frequently you get them out of autopilot, the more frequently people come with very innovative ideas that, see, our 5 senses, our brain never stops. Our brain is always catching all kind of information from our 5 senses. Mindful means, when you tap into the power of the brain? Or do you want your brain to run you on autopilot?
I like that, because that leads to my next question about stress management. Because to your point, if we can step back, I like that idea, because in whatever the situation is, anything that could be intense, it doesn't have to be malware, it could be a ransom, it could be anything. It could be you get a text message, you get a phone call, you get bad news, you get whatever the thing is. I like the idea of backing up first and kind of catching your breath and say, okay, let's think this through, versus, oh my God, like freak out and go crazy and like a hurricane. Before you know it, you made it worse because you wasted precious time that could have been delegated to actually observing what actually just happened.
Mm-hmm. And that's, you'll see that in a lot of different episodes and serials and everything else, right? I mean, even if you work with cops, I worked with ancillary department in Made in Illinois when I was there. And the very first thing that they train you is actually that, right? When you are at an incident, don't make any rush decisions unless you have all the facts with you.
Mm. Yeah.
It's about training, day in, day out. But then when it comes to us in action, we forget. And the book that is coming out, Ascendancy Action, Ascendancy Awakened, It's a book that's coming out here by end of this week. And I have laid out 4 pillars to it. That is useful for both individuals and teams. And one of that framework that I've created is PEPTID. So that's passion, energy, emotion. The 3 of them is, I think your question was around stress. So I'm not sure what the question was, but because stress, when we talk about stress, passion, energy, and emotion, when any of those 3 are misaligned, right, it causes certain hormones to be excreted that gives us stress.
That makes sense, because if you don't understand the best systems to use, then you're not using anything to organize your next move. And talk a little bit about that, being able to organize yourself to be prepared when crisis or situations come when you have to depend on those value systems that you have installed beforehand, because it's not like you just go through whatever you're going through, life, and all of a sudden you're going to be prepared when it strikes. No, you got to have a game plan before a crisis happens. Touch a little bit about that preparedness.
Well, that's a big one, and that's where all this micro practices comes into play. So I have another podcast that it goes live every Tuesday at Pacific noon on the Transformation Network, and my goal is to get the micro practices to 200,000 people in this year. And micro practices are very simple. Like I told about the stop sign. I give you that example of stop sign, right? I give a lot of different practices in those sessions. Another very good example is box breathing. Box breathing specifically is helpful when you think you are stressed. Anytime you think you are stressed, and it's very simple. 4, 4, 4, 4. 4 times you count 4, right? So you inhale for count of 4. You hold your breath for count of 4. You exhale for a count of 4, and then you hold for a count of 4. If you do this 4 times, there are 3 things biologically that happens in your body. Your heart stops racing.
Yeah.
Right? If you're sweating, you'll stop sweating.
Yeah.
And the moment you focus on your breath for that period of time, it's about 36 seconds, or maybe 52 seconds, depending on how long breath you can take in 4 counts. You are giving oxygen directly to your brain without having the brain to do anything else for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I have many people mention the box breathing, and I do that myself. It's funny because if you just use it just almost like exercise, you don't have to be a power lifter or something crazy like that. But if you just kind of make it part of the norm of what you do, like make it super easy. Like if you go home and you open a can of pop soda, wherever you come from, and however you say it, that's part of your routine. That's what you do. But if you use tools like that, the box breathing, and just make it a norm, like even if you wake up in the morning and just kind of practice it when you're taking a shower or whatever, you're driving to work, that's a great tool to just kind of use, because when you are in a situation, it's almost like it naturally triggers you to kind of do that. Because if you look at an athlete who does it, their sport professionally for a living, they don't just practice every now and then. No, because when there's crucial moments in the game, when the game is on the line, 0.5 seconds left, they are utilizing all the things that they have been doing in the practice behind the scenes, because the stage is just is magnifying whatever you were practicing on behind the scenes when no one's watching.
Right. Absolutely. And another big one, it will be a miss if I don't mention it. Just like micro practices, there is something called micro journaling, gratitude journaling. And a lot of people, so one stigma around mindful is that you have to go to a retreat. No, you don't have to go to a retreat. Or you have to go to some mountain to get some. No, you don't have to do anything. You start doing this micro practices and you'll see how your life changes. And one of the key things is gratitude journaling. If you get in a habit of writing, see, I'm talking to you, I have got these cards all around me, index cards. So my practice is so involved with gratitude that every conversation that I start, like before I jump on a call with you, I wrote 3 things that I'm thankful for. Once I finish the call, I'll write 3 things that I was thankful for. Right? I'm thankful to be having an opportunity to give this knowledge I have to others. I'm thankful to be blessed to have the knowledge that can improve others. Right? I'm thankful that today all my technology is working perfectly. I don't have to worry about it. So my point is, if you start thinking about minor things, you don't have to write a book, you don't have to write a journal. Right? Journaling means you just write 1 or 2 things that you are thankful for. So I was thankful for I got parking lot in front of the shop, so I didn't have to walk in the rain.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it, when you think about it, is just keep it simple, man. You know, sometimes we try to overcomplicate life and we want to get too deep and we want to find all these magic formulas. And I mean, there's some things where it takes a lot of research and a lot of execution, but on the normal day-to-day life, it's really just the minor things you're doing. It's the small details that make up who you end up becoming. And there's one thing I want to touch on before we sign off, because I know this is a good conversation, but last thing I want to address is real quickly, talk about how we can tell when we are making progression in life versus when we are declining. Because when a person has potential to do something, it's up to them to live up to that expectation. No one's going to live your life for you. What are some of the key insight that you can share with the audience that they can use to measure their self-awareness on their ability to keep making progress in life and being able to use that tool to say, okay, let's be real. There's some things I need to address in order for me to get to the next level.
So, 2-part answer. One part is mindset. The most important thing is mindset. And I would challenge everyone listening to think, so take 5 minutes and think about it. There's nothing good and bad. There's nothing called progress and not progress. As long as you're living, you are part of the universe that's evolving and you will evolve, right? The question is, we feel we are not progressing. We think we are not progressing when the results that we see are not to what we expect and anticipate. Right? And I learned from someone almost 20 years back that life is nothing but an unending sequence of experiments. Right? If you look at definition of experiment is you do an activity to get a result. Based on the result, you choose the next activity to get another result. Then you choose another activity to get another result. Now, what we do is we get emotionally attached with getting or not getting the result.
That's good.
Right? So the moment what we have to get emotionally attached to is the activity, because that's all we can do. If it did not give the result we want, I'll keep doing something different till I get the result I want. But no, people get latched on, oh, I did not get the job, I should be worthless. No, you have worth of you. And I'll give another example. So I teach on progress from the stage. In one of the workshops, I was talking about my progress framework. So purpose, reflection, organizing, grit, resilience, empowerment, support, and self-improvement. So it brings all collectively a human where it is. And in that, I gave the whole talk and said, why you need to have a purpose. You have to reflect back and see where you're going with your purpose. You have to organize your life. And we went on. And after the talk was over, we had Q&A and one lady asked that, hey, Singh, I love it what you're saying. I want to do it, but I'm the sole bread earner. I have to travel as a nurse. I travel almost 2.5 hours every day. So I don't know where I can get this time to be able to reorganize my life to get to purpose. I said, hold on, listen to what you just said. You travel for 2.5 hours. What do you travel? No, I drive. Okay, so what do you listen? What do you do when you're driving? I listen to news. I listen to something. I said, do you realize that 2.5 hours you can listen to something that adds to what you want to do?
Yeah. Yeah. It is what they say, is how you use your time or don't use your time. But it gets right to the point where you're saying about focusing on activity. My dad always talks about the point of don't be emotional, because being emotional is your worst enemy. It is the threat to every accomplishment that you can achieve, because, man, that's a whole nother show. But I have to say this one last point. Emotions, they're normal. But what makes them not normal is when you dwell in the emotional state, because it goes back to what we talked about earlier in our discussion about managing crisis. You don't have time to just be emotional. At some point, you have to step back and observe what is actually going on. It's almost like the perspective of someone who's on the runway versus the pilot who can look down and have an overview. And sometimes we got to have that overview perspective versus being down the runway, because there's some things that you can see above the ground from a bigger picture versus when you're too close to the situation and you're just missing out on some of the details.
And those are the two things. I mean, if we can control the mindset and we can get detachment from the result and get more attached to the activity, that does phenomenal change, transformation in people's life.
Man, great masterclass. I'm going to be listening to this podcast episode myself, because I think it's just a great emphasis on just the small details of life. And sometimes we allow what we feel is progress or not progress to be more of a distraction, because it's one thing to overkill on observing your life versus just getting the game, getting the field. You know, like, just go. Like, imagine if you're the best player in the whole world, but you're just thinking about the play. No, the coach is yelling at you. No, just make a move, because that's where your greatness is your next move, what you're doing right now in the moment, not what you're thinking about, not where you pity party about. It's about what you're doing. Are you turning the page? Are you getting it done? Are you moving on? And so as we say that, it's time for us to move on. But you've been listening to Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest, Singh. Go to his website, singhleadership.com. He's executive leadership coach and high performance mentor. Like always, man, I want to say thank you for your time.